here. Like I said, we're going to do it a little bit different today because we haven't done the verses, the readings of those yet, and I just thought it would feel the need to read through the verses that we say every week. Just talk through those a little bit, and if I'm going to share some things, and this will be a time where you can share a little bit more back if there's some insights that you want to bring into it. But just wanted to talk through these because we say these every week. Sometimes we don't want to lose track of some of the things that they're saying to us. And then from here, after we go through these verses, I might be able to get through all of them this week. Don't know about that. It depends on how talkative I am. Y'all know what that could be like, right? But then from here, we're going to look at going into the Gospel of John because in teaching through that, through the idea of looking at it from the feasts and how these things are just lined up over and over again in the Gospel of John, and how the feasts give us an understanding of what's happening in that, which is called, Yeshua's Judean ministry. And it's, why is he in Judea all the time? It's because he's there in Jerusalem for the feast. I hope you'll be able to see it. You may not be able to see everything.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so we start out by talking through this one. So let's just say these together. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites, you must observe my Sabbath, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, so that you will know that I am Adonai, who sets you apart." All right, we're going to back up just a little bit here. What are some of the things that we observe in it? The Lord said, so whose idea is this? The Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites." Did Moses just pull this out and just make it up on his own? No. He says, "Tell the Israelites." And then it's much more of, what kind of a statement is that? You must observe.
Literally, you must guard.
Yes, we'll get there. But the must, what kind of a statement is that? Is it a suggestion?
It's not a suggestion.
Not a suggestion. It's not just, I would really like it if you did that. He said, this is a must. This is a you will kind of a thing. You will observe my Sabbath. And when you look at what this means, observe, the word shamar, to keep, to guard, to observe, or to give heed. Not for us, huh? So that's what observe means, to keep, to guard, to give heed, to observe, to celebrate, or perform. Okay? So these are some secondary definitions. So it requires, it's not just observe as in look at, it's observe as in it requires an action in order to fulfill the command. Right? If you're going to fulfill the command, you will observe, you will keep, you will give heed or celebrate or perform this Sabbath if and you are one of my people. Okay, that's where it's coming from. And it even has the connotations of have charge of. You will have charge of Exodus 31. Exodus 31.
Like, Kelly, it seems like it also gives the idea of not just performing, but I think I've seen translations that say to carefully obey.
Carefully obey, yes, I have seen those as well. And that's an important part of it. But the idea of having charge of, in other words, he is the one that gives the command. He is the one, you must observe my Sabbath. But the idea of you must have charge of. So there is, a hierarchy. There is a sense of order in this. He's like, this is what I am telling you to do, and you have the responsibility, have charge over fulfilling the command that I give. Does that make sense? So he is giving us responsibility. He's delegating to us. So the Sabbath is a delegation to his people that they are going to set this apart, that they are going to observe it and guard it. It's a responsibility to keep the Sabbath. And that's, yeah, and you're neglectful in your duty, you're neglectful in your charge if you fail to take this seriously. Because so it's the king giving it's like when you have guard duty type of a thing. You're supposed to stand on guard when you receive those orders. And so you have that responsibility to do it. And if you just blow it off, well, that says something about you. That doesn't say anything about the one giving the order. That says something about you. It also means to watch for or to wait for or treasure up. So are those negative words or are these positive words? These are positive. See, so many times we talk about, and at least in our former life in the traditional church, we thought the idea was like, man, that must have been such a burden to keep the Sabbath. And had it become that? Yes, in a lot of ways it had become a burden. Because there were so many additions, there were so many rules of you can do this, you can't do that, and all it just built up and built up and built up to where it was not necessarily something that they had to look forward to. But this is a treasure. This is observing as in treasure up there. Look forward to this. And that's something powerful. And of course, we first see it used in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. Anyone want to guess where that is referring to? Genesis 2:15. Yeah. On the seventh day, God rested. He completed all of His work. Yeah, let me read it for you here. I meant to have that ready. Mm-hmm. Genesis 2:15 is the first time this word is used, and it says, "Then Adonai Elohim took the man and gave him rest in the Garden of Eden in order to cultivate and watch over it." So the first time that it's really used is in context of giving charge of the garden. He has a responsibility with the garden. It's the same word, shamar. Then the next one, it is a sign, for you, right? That's one of the ways that you put it. Sign is the word oath. It's a signal. It's a distinguishing mark. Something that sets you apart from everything else.
Just going back to that last one, we've been going through, we started the book of Genesis in our sense control.
Okay.
So day 6, God created man,
mm-hmm.
right? And it's interesting that the first day after He created Adam was a rest day. The next day was a rest day. It was the Sabbath day. So that fits right into what you just said. He gave him rest because God formed him outside of Eden somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And He placed man in Eden.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. I really, that verse just jumped out at me because I've never seen that before.
It's sort of like getting a new job and saying, okay, your first day is vacation.
Yeah, that's
But he had been working. Adam had been working on that first day of the 6th day. What had he been doing? He'd been naming all of the different kinds of animals that came before him. He even had surgery on that first day. He went to the doctor and they got anesthesia, and he was in recovery. So this was recovery for Adam the first day. And so this was his first day was pretty full. But he got to come home to his wife. That's very true. I'm not going to go there because that'll get me in trouble. But the idea that the first full day of Adam's existence, the first full day, because he was created at some point on the 6th day after the other animals had been created, but the first full day of Adam's existence was rest. And so that was his time with God, with the Lord, with his Creator. His first full day was a day of just them together and nothing else. And that's an important thing. So it's something to observe or wait for or treasure. The next word being sign or oath is a signal, a distinguishing mark. So keeping the Sabbath is a distinguishing mark from who? Those that don't. keep the Sabbath. This makes a distinction between us. It sets us apart. It distinguishes us from everybody else. Okay? And so if you're keeping a different day, you're missing something. You're missing the mark that distinguishes God's people from everybody else. And it doesn't matter what other day it is. This is the day that he says distinguishes you, distinguishes my people. It's also translated in the sense of evidence. And I thought that one was significant. So if you hear that phrase that people say in church all the time, if you were ever on trial for being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Y'all have heard that before? Well, the Sabbath, the sign that it is supposed to be some of that evidence that we are God's people, that we are submitting our lives to Him, that we are walking and following in His way. The trouble comes is when we start trying to set our own rules and our own ways and do it the way we want to do it. We're stepping away from the evidence that He has given, because ultimately who is the judge that determines what evidence is admissible or not? He is. He's the one who sets the standard. He's the one that says, this is the evidence that I will accept. And that's it. It's first used in Genesis 1:14 and Genesis 4:15. In 1:14, this is the passage in which he says, see, now I don't have enough light over here. There is a lamp. No, is it working? No, you're not. How about, yeah, I can do that. 1:14 says, Then God said, let lights be in the expanse of the sky be for separating the day from the night. They will be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, or for signs and the festivals, the Moed. So that's what they are for. So this word, oath, is that evidence, that distinguishing mark, that sign that separates day from night, that separates His appointments and particularly the things that He chooses to do. It's also, the next time it's used in Genesis chapter 4, which is interestingly enough, Genesis 4:15 says this, But the Lord said to him, In that case, anyone who kills Cain is to be avenged 7 times over. So Adonai put a mark, an oath, upon Cain, so that anyone who found him would not strike him down. So a distinguishing mark of Cain that somehow would be seen, would be recognized, and you have a response to do with it. Okay, so that's the next time that one is used. It set him apart. It was a signal. And so many times that's where you hear people mess this one up, is they talk about the mark of Cain being all kinds of things negative, as a curse or a problem. But in reality, this sign that was put upon Cain was for his protection. That was not obviously he was experiencing God's judgment, but did God still have compassion upon him to protect his life? Yes, He did. So that's the first time that was there. So, and then how long, in Exodus 31, how long is this sign supposed to last? It's all of your generations. And for what purpose? This sign is there, the Sabbath is there, so that we may know, that idea of Yada, that we may know what?
That it's Him who sanctifies us.
That He is the one that sanctifies us. And through the fact that we are keeping, observing, guarding, looking forward to the Sabbath and this sign, through it, what does He do? He sets us apart. It's a distinguishing mark, and by keeping it, we ourselves are set apart. We are made holy in that regard. And it's holy so that we may know Him. That the purpose of the Sabbath primarily is that we may know Him and know Him better and be distinguished as His people. Yes?
It also proclaims that He's the Creator.
Yes.
Yes, it does. Because that's the whole pattern of the first week is with on the seventh day that He rested. So He set that up on our behalf, really, because I know that was something that was said earlier. Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath.
Don't you think that problem with all of this is that a lot of people don't understand that we are Israel.
That we are grafted in, yes, and we have been made heirs according to the promise.
All the promises that are made to Israel are also made to us.
Yes, that we are included in that, yes.
We are one in Christ.
So the covenants, we are no longer strangers and foreigners to the covenants of the promise. And so if we understand that we are included in the covenants, then the terms of the covenants should also apply. That's a challenge that we don't understand very well. You're absolutely right. Because a lot of our doctrine has taught us otherwise. And it's hard to break that.
We should have known if we're God's people, no matter what we call ourselves, we would be obeying what He said. So it doesn't make sense that was.
Well, we base ourselves more on human wisdom and tradition more than the words of Christ. You know.
Well, it's been transferred almost
Centuries, yeah.
That was the big push was to separate the Jews from the Christians.
So yeah, we are living with decisions that were made thousands of years ago in a day when people didn't have the Word of God for themselves, and so they just had to trust what they were told. Now we have the Word of God for ourselves, and we have to break that dependence on what we've been told.
And it was so early. We were looking at something Melito did, which was 2nd century, and they realized that they don't have access to the Word of God, and they're dividend.
Right.
And what he was saying towards the end were just flat out lies, but you would have no way of knowing it.
No, you wouldn't, unless you were in the, you talk about you have to be in the know, you have to be in the right list or on the right thing so you can know the chain of command or know what's being said out there. If you're on the wrong email list and you'll never find out about certain things, well, yeah, there was a very limited circulation of some things. Yep. Vicky?
The second week we met, we talked about do not forsake the assembly, which is actually don't forsake the synagogue.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, those are the places that have the word. Right. And so if they're separating themselves from the synagogue, then they become extremely dependent on someone else to tell them what the word says, what it means, all this stuff, because they're no longer even going somewhere where it can be read to them. Right?
Yes. And so that is a challenge. But this sets us apart. And God uses the Sabbath to make us holy ourselves. Then there's Exodus 31:16. Let's say this one together. It says, the Israelites must observe the Sabbath, celebrating it throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. Okay. It is a sign between me and Bnei Israel forever. For in 6 days Adonai made the heavens and the earth. But on the seventh day He ceased from work and rested. Okay, that's the tie back to creation. So this is the pattern that He set right at the very beginning. Celebrate is the word asaf. It means to do or fashion, accomplish, or produce. Again, it has that sense of celebrating, but it's a matter of, you can't just see that it's on the calendar kind of a thing. It's a matter of doing something in response. This is that time. This is that day. This is that moment. And there is something to accomplish in doing it. There is something for us in doing it. So that's where Paul is coming from in 1 Corinthians 5, where he says, in talking about the unleavened bread and keeping the feast. So therefore, let us keep the feast, because through keeping the feast, it accomplishes something in us. It teaches us something in us about the reality of sin and how much it penetrates our lives. Right? That's what unleavened bread partially does. Yes.
Well, you know, now that you mention that, you see God, he'll take a feast and he'll say, do this on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll say, you know, even though maybe put a sacrifice or whatever, it was doing something.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just sit at home and read about it.
Right. And in doing something, there is a lesson that you gain in doing it, so that when these things begin to manifest in the future, then you'll be able to recognize them because, oh, wait a minute, that reminds me of this.
And that, you know, is a very, Gary and I were discussing how come the Jewish people aren't necessarily seeing, well, since the temple's no longer there, they're no longer having to take this animal with their hands on it.
Mm-hmm.
They've substituted these services and these prayers and all these things. They don't have that same, that poor animal.
Visual reminder or active reminder.
Now, we do have the one, of course, that, you know, in the world now, that's an extreme reminder of, wow, this is what sin does.
Sure.
Yeah, but they don't have that. So, in a way, just coming forward with it to do it again, even if it's for however long it might be that the scripture talks about it coming back, but it will bring things back to light that there is blood, there is death, and something had to die.
It's probably no accident in the eyes and the mind of God that, you know, when the future temple is rebuilt and some of these things are restarted again, that there is also a great revival among the Jewish people for Messiah, and they'll begin to see even more.
Right.
So as we're approaching it,
these animals had to die to show that there was a price to be paid, and then they can understand more of, wow.
Yeah, and it'll show the Messiah in all of it. It also has the idea of preparation in it, to do, fashion, accomplish, produce, or to prepare. So celebrating the Sabbath, they must celebrate or prepare for the Sabbath. It is a change. It's not something that comes naturally, does it? Now, if you've been doing it for a while, maybe you're used to it. But you're just going through life and you have to stop yourself and realize, wait a minute, tomorrow is the Sabbath. I have to get ready for it because I am deliberately putting the normal things of my life on hold so that I can have this day of rest. So the first time this one comes up is Genesis 1:7, where he says God produced the expanse. So right off the bat, the idea, I mean, can you imagine if it was translated, the word made, like this one is, celebrate. God celebrated the expanse. Because he sees a joy in what he has made, doesn't he? There is a joy in all of that, but he does it. He fashions it. He produces it. He prepares it. He does all of that for this universe that he has made. He didn't just, sometimes the way we talk about it even in science and the Big Bang and all those other things, the theories that are out there, you know, it's like it just happened and everything was just randomly spinning around and doing all this stuff around over here. That's totally not the biblical picture, because God's hand was fashioning it at every step of the way. You know, again, with that kind of a statement, we both are recognizing, science and in Scripture, we're recognizing the universe has a beginning. We're arguing over the timing and we're arguing over how it happened and who did it, if anybody. They don't think anybody did it. We think somebody did do it. And they don't think there was any guidance or control to any of it. We think there was. But that's how it was. Right off the very beginning, he was preparing and fashioning the expanse. It's also in verse 11 where the fruit trees on the earth were bearing their fruit. They were producing their fruit. They were accomplishing the reason for which they were made. Imagine a fruit tree that doesn't bear fruit. It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's not doing what it was made to do. That's one reason why Yeshua, when he comes to the fig tree, when he says, hey, you're a fruit tree. You're supposed to be producing something, and you're not. That's a big deal for something in God's creation that He fashioned, that He produced, that He prepared, and it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Of course, who's the biggest example of that? We are. We're the biggest examples of things that He creates that are not doing what we're supposed to do.
And in a sense, Israel was likened to a vineyard.
Yes, Israel likened unto a vineyard, absolutely.
It didn't produce what she was supposed to produce.
The kind of fruit that He had made her for, some of which was being a light to the Gentiles even, to be welcoming and inviting them to this kind of life.
Now, let me ask you this. In Hebrews, the 5th chapter, it says, for if Joshua had given them less, then he would not have afterwards spoken of another day. Now, he names a day of less for the people of God, for he who has entered his less has seized of his work as God did seize of his. Let us therefore be diligent to enter that less. That's not a rest of a day, it's a rest of the Spirit, to quit once turning the word away.
Well, the millennial kingdom is seen in a lot of ways as a time or a day of rest. Because when you look at the biblical time frame, we've essentially had about 6,000 years of time as presented in Scripture. We're on the verge, somehow or another, some look at it in the sense of we're on the verge of the 7,000 year of existence on earth. And that's corresponding with a day of like unto 1,000 years. It's as if we are about to enter into what would be the seventh day of life on earth. Does that make sense?
So, how does that tie in with let us be diligent to enter that later?
What does diligent mean?
I mean, with all of our efforts.
With diligence in this kind of a sense, especially with the previous word of that's going to take too long. Of celebrating, perform, or having charge of, to keep or to guard. Diligence in that respect is a lot about talking about getting ready for. You are diligent that when the moment comes, when the moment arrives, you are prepared for that moment. You understand what it is. You are, it's like we've used the analogy of in the military being on guard duty. Well, if you know that your guard duty starts at 1 o'clock and at 12:59 you're not in uniform, you don't have your weapon, you're not anywhere near the station, your guard station, are you prepared? Are you diligent in getting ready for your duty? No, you're not. Yes.
Well, Gary was talking about, there was the exile from the garden, then there was the exile that God brought them out of with Moses, and then when Joshua goes in, which is a picture, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So now you're coming up, we're in exile, you're coming up to the 7,000 years, so we don't want to do what they did when you enter in to the millennial reign. This time, do what you're supposed to do, not. And
one reason why they didn't experience the rest with Joshua is they were not obedient to his command, and they did not, clean out the people that they were supposed to. That they didn't have rest in part because they still had enemies even living within their territory.
So it's just a constant picture of, it's just like salvation. When you get here, now be diligent to do,
Yes. And getting ready. Yes.
I think the opposite goes along with the parable of the 10 virgins.
Okay.
Some are ready, some are not.
Some have enough oil.
They're waiting for something.
It's not as if they didn't have any oil.
But and some of them were diligent to prepare for that day. And you even think about the time when Jesus came the first time. He had them doing these things, the Shabbat and the Moed, doing these things so that they would recognize him when they came. It was no accident. He died on Passover. It was no accident. He rose on first fruits. All of these things that were happening, were no accident because they were supposed to go, oh, this is what we've been doing this for. That's what that's all about. And they missed it. But we do these things so that when it comes, we'll recognize
Mm-hmm. As 1 Thessalonians 5 talks about. We are not in the dark as the rest are, but that we are sons of the day, and so that we should be not found in the dark, not caught off guard, not asleep when these things start happening.
And the passage in Hebrews chapter 4 there, it almost seems to be like the translators attempted to, in some way, spiritualize that. Where literally it says there still remains a keeping of the Sabbath for the people of God.
There still remains
the Greek word there means to actually observe it.
So the Hebrews 4 passage says there still remains a keeping of the Sabbath to come for the people of God.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We'll have to look closer at that.
But now the rest of salvation is what I'm getting out of this, because this is present tense. This is not future. It says, for he who has entered his rest has ceased in his works, and God did his. So when you get, it says to strive to enter into that rest, that means the rest of knowing that he's done it all and you don't have to do it.
Well, but what I would want to go back and look at in that particular one is that for he who has entered that rest is finished from his work. I want to look and see if that he there is singular. Because he who has entered his rest, the way you just read it, sounds to me like that's talking about Yeshua. He's the one that has truly entered into the rest because he says his work is finished. He says that upon the cross. And he's made that point already in the book of Hebrews, or he will, if he hasn't already, saying, that the high priest is the one who stands day after day giving the sacrifices. But it is Yeshua who's able to sit down because his work, as far as offering the sacrifice, is done and completed. So I'm thinking that one there is talking about a point he has made or will make about the rest, that he is the one that is truly entered in the rest, and we are going to come in with him when those days arrive. So it's both present and future.
Well, I think the interesting that follow furthermore, verse 11 says, therefore let us be diligent to enter that rest so that no one will fall through following the same example of disobedience. So to enter into that rest, to prepare for that, whether it's present or future, it requires that we be walking in obedience to him, so that we do not fall through following the example of disobedience. For the word of God is living, active, sharper than a two-edged sword, and so on and so forth.
So yeah, there's.
Even in our salvation, we work it out with through that we obey. We must abide in him through diligence.
Obedience is something that is done because we are saved, not because.
Not doing our own work.
Right.
I think we're trained with these certain words. What rest means. There are people that think rest means, we know that Sabbath means that we're to assemble. But to some people, I myself have been guilty of it in the past, that just means lay around all day. Oh, you're trained that certain words mean certain things. And entering a rest doesn't mean we do nothing. It means that now and he gives us things that we're supposed to do. And it's another thing that I noticed, and some of these people that study a lot, they'll send articles out and stuff like that. And one of the things that Gary and I were discussing is there are some people that just say, they look at the calendar and that this, somebody's already done everything, so we don't have to do anything. And then there's other people that says, well, the word says, let's go outside and look for them, whatever. And I'm not arguing at these points, but I'm just saying there's some people that sit there and read it and they try to teach their kids, let's go outside and do this, and this is what a piece of barley looks like, and, to where they're actively. And so sometimes by things being so convenient for us, and just like with the Jews, having the prayers rather than the actual, originally the sacrifices, where they had to go to Israel and they had to lift their hands on. Those were very active things, and then it kind of, what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to say one thing's right or one thing's wrong. I'm just saying that we need to pay attention to what it's saying and try to think about it, especially as a homeschooling parent. You are trying to break some of these things down and say, well, this is what this would have looked like, or let's try to make the what is an or 4.5 cups, or, whatever, so that it's not just something we're just kind of glossing over. You know what I'm saying?
Being diligent, and I do, but being diligent means that, in observing, in keeping the Sabbath, you are being diligent to enter into that rest. In observing and keeping and guarding the feast and things, you are being diligent to enter the rest that He has prepared for us. Because all of these actions that we are taking here are preparing us for the rest that He has provided and providing. It's not, both now and future. So.
Today, it's telling me that I'm to be diligent.
Yes.
To enter into the rest of my salvation, because Jesus has completed everything that needs to be done.
Yes.
And I am to be diligent in working out my salvation, the where people can see the light, the salt that's in my life.
Right.
And then I am also trusting Him fully to take care of all the details.
Absolutely.
Walking in faith and
Yes.
not in works.
Yes. I don't think we're in disagreement.
Yeah.
So perpetual, getting back onto this, it's a perpetual ordinance or whatever else is olam, which means long duration, antiquity, but it is a long duration. I'm sorry, there's a comma there. It means a long duration. It means things past and things future. That's what olam talks about. It's things. It can be used referring to things that happened long ago. It can be used to refer to things way ahead.
That's why it says forever and ever.
Forever and ever, yes. So forever or always. And so that's a picture. What's great about the idea of perpetual ordinance is that as long as time is moving forward, you're supposed to be doing this as well. But it's also taking that picture pointing backwards is that just as you are doing it now, you are doing it with them that have come before you. And it's all moving forward to the rest that is in the future. So it's for all generations, so continuous existence or everlasting, an indefinite or an unending future. So we're not necessarily privy to when it's finished. We're supposed to, it's kind of like the command that was given to Abraham when he was first called, and he said, leave your father's house, your land, your father's house, everything you know, and go to the land that I will show you. Okay? The destination was not revealed. He just said, you start going, and I'll tell you when to stop. Okay? This perpetual ordinance, this is something where it's, you start doing it, and I'll tell you when to stop. And His telling of us if this is going to stop, it has to be something clear, and it has to be something definite by the one who has the authority to set it up. It's not just anybody can say, okay, we can stop now. Right? It's the one who sets the rule, sets the ordinance, sets the law, is the only one who has the authority to say it's done. Okay? Which gets into church history, because you read into how Sabbath, we broke away from Sabbath. The church was saying early on, we have the authority to say we're moving the day. And it's like, no, you don't have that authority. Only the God who set up the system has the authority to say when it's over. Okay, so it's perpetual, it's olam. The first time that was used was Genesis chapter 3, verse 22, where He says, talking about Adam and Eve, hey, we have to take them out of a garden, otherwise they might eat from the tree of life and live forever. Olam. And we look at that as punishment in a lot of ways, but we also have to realize that God was doing us a favor in not letting us eat of the tree of life while we were in a broken and sinful state. How would you like to live forever broken? Would not. Because if we had eaten of the tree of life after sin, if Adam and Eve had done that, then the possibility of redemption is gone.
Yeah. that they would remain in their unregenerate condition.
Which is essentially where Satan is.
Yeah.
And so that makes me wonder, did they do something? Satan made a decision and fell and took a third of the angels with him. And did something happen to where they are now stuck in that state of fallenness and there is no way to redeem them?
Weren't the angels in an immortal state?
Already. Yeah. Again, I don't know. Yeah, somehow or another, they were given an option to make a choice. And then once that choice was made, there's no coming back. And I don't understand how that all happened, but it was a disaster. And then that's why, the angels, they long to look into, as Peter talks about, they long to look into the things of our salvation. And one reason why I think they long to look into it, they long to look into these things because they're like, man, how is that possible?
I believe they stand in marvel.
Because they can't experience that. The fallen angels in particular, you think that the angels have friends that made the wrong choice.
What is man that thou art bound?
Yeah.
Son of man that thou art.
Yeah. But if you think that an angel, Gabriel, might have had a friend, somebody he knew, or a connection in the other angel that chose to go with Satan, and for him to think there is no way for him to come back, but you give these humans, there is the possibility of redemption.
There's no teshuva.
Yeah, there is no repentance. There's no teshuva, absolutely. So it's an amazing thing, but the idea that we have the option, there is a way for us to live forever. But we don't want to live forever in our broken state. So the Sabbath is part of those things that is supposed to be a part of our lives for every generation, for our entire existence. And it will be a part of our lives for our entire existence in some way or form in the future, in the kingdom of God.
I heard a sermon one time that never has left me, and it was about the angel with the flaming sword in the Garden of Eden to keep human beings down.
Yes.
So it was talking about the church on each end of the mercy seat.
Mm-hmm.
And the standing, and then when the apostle went in the tomb and saw the two angels, one was sitting on top and the other sitting at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed no longer to be standing. They were resting because it was death.
Well, definitely the picture of the angels at each end of the place where his body was laid is supposed to be a mirror picture of the ark of the mercy seat. Yes, absolutely.
And Gary said it's also a picture of the veil, because those angels that were guarding that, the veil.
Well, I'm saying the veil had the two cherubim.
The veil had the cherub woven into the picture. Yeah, that's very true. So this one, when you're looking at the Sabbath, it's tied, as we talked about, to the pattern of creation. So it's God's example. He is the one that's setting this pattern. We talked about that a bit already. And that's important. So it's a perpetual thing. Then, man.
Hey, Callie.
Yes.
There's a guy that's written a book about that perpetualness of and so many people have commented about of the 7 days and the patterns and how our weeks, our months, our years, these patterns are still active. Like the first day of the week can seem chaos to people who don't understand the patterns, and and that even in business in the 6th year, 7th year don't buy, invest, or whatever, take the rest. And there's some people that have put some of that stuff in, and that pattern just keeps on going.
Sure it does. Let's see if we can get through these next ones, at least some of the Old Testament passages. Ezekiel 36, let's say this together. It says, "Moreover, I will give you a new heart. I will put a new spirit within you. I will remove the stony heart from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my ruach within you. Then I will cause you to walk in my laws, so you will keep my rulings and do them. Then you will live in the land that I gave to your fathers. You will be my people, and I will be your God. I'm mostly going to be starting with the second part of this one. Then I will cause you to walk in my laws. But one of the things that this just talks about, we need a new heart, first off. Because what's happened to our natural heart, our first heart? It's been corrupted. The heart is deceitfully wicked. Who can fathom it? Who can know it? Who can understand it? That's the state of our heart, apart from faith, apart from Messiah and the work that He has done. So we need a new spirit within you. We need the stony heart of removed, the hard heart, the heart that is unwilling to submit to God and His ways, that's unwilling to take up the sign that sets and distinguishes His people. It's a lot of those times that you, as kids, y'all remember these moments when you're told to do something. I don't want to do that. Or you're told not to do something, then what? What's the reaction when we're told not to do something? That's what I want to do. That's the nature that comes to us. If we're told to do something, who are you to tell me to do that? And then if we're told not to do something, it's like, that's what I'm going to do anyway. So that's what our heart is like. And we need that part of us that comes so naturally to us is what the Lord is trying to remove from us. That kind of pattern, that kind of behavior from us, where we're rejecting His authority most of all. And we've said this, to our kids growing up, that mom and dad, we're practice. That if you have a hard time listening to or obeying mom and dad, who you can see and touch and know is real right there in front of your face, if you have a hard time with us when we're right here with you, how much more difficult are you going to have of a time in respecting and honoring and obeying God, whom you don't see? If you can blow us off, then it's going to be easier for you to blow Him off. So we're practice in that regard. But we need to have heart surgery, essentially, to have that removed from us, to have a heart that is soft, that is responsive to Him, in a place that's a better place for His Spirit to dwell. But the purpose of that is this one. Then I will cause you to walk in my laws. So cause you to is the word asa. It also has the word idea of doing, of fashioning, of accomplishing, and producing. We've already kind of seen that with the words that we've looked at already. But I will cause you to, I will fashion you to, or I will accomplish in you, or I will produce in you the walk, the way. I will cause you to walk in my laws. I will fashion you and mold you and shape you to walk in my laws. I will produce in you this way of life. That's what the Spirit is supposed to do. Now, we in mainstream traditional church and all that stuff, we always like to say we want to walk by the Spirit, right? We want to live in the power of the Spirit, don't we? Mm-hmm. We want to be filled with the Spirit. Well, the role that the Spirit is going to do in us is to cause us to live a certain way, cause us to walk in a certain way of life. It also has the idea of preparing. He is preparing us. I will prepare you to walk in my law, because His ways are not our ways. And His ways don't come naturally to us. So we have to be changed. So He will cause us, He will prepare us to walk in His ways. And the word walk is halak, which means to go, to walk, come, or proceed. He will cause us to proceed. Because when He has performed our surgery, when He has given us a new heart and a heart of flesh from a heart of stone, moving forward, is your life going to be different? If you have a condition that causes, like a heart condition, that your valves, you have leaky valves or whatever else like that, and you can't exert yourself, otherwise your heart starts messing up and you can't do that. Well, after the surgery, a lot of times you feel good enough to be able to, now I can do those things that I wasn't doing before. Okay? So we can, once we have had that heart surgery, then we can proceed from that point in a new walk, in a new way. So that's one of the pictures that we have in baptism. You are buried with Christ in baptism and you are raised to what? Raised to walk in newness of life. It's more than just a new life of salvation. It's a new way of life. The new way of life. So we carried over some of this language, but we don't always know the implications of what all of that means. So it's walking is a sense of how you live. It is a manner of life. And it's first used in Genesis chapter 2, verse 14, where it's talking about one of the rivers and it's flowing, its way, the direction and how it's going. The next time it's used is chapter 3, verse 8. They heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden. He was there on a certain path. And so He'll cause you to walk in my laws or statutes is the word chok. And it's an ordinance, a limit. I thought that one was interesting. That it could mean limit. Something prescribed. It's a boundary type of a thing.
Boundary marker.
Yeah. It is a boundary. I will cause you to walk in my laws, in my path, in my ways. And what kind of a way is His? Is it a broad way or is it it's a narrow path? It's a narrow way. So therefore, it has limits. It has boundaries that you can step in and walk in, or you can step out of. And I liken it, and I think I've shared this before, I liken it unto, the border between North and South Korea. It's the most heavily mined part of the planet. And if you just want to go for a walk and walk into North Korea from South Korea, guess what's more than likely going to happen? Boom is more than likely going to happen. Not that they're going to let you even do that anyway. But if you could just take a walk through there, it's going to kill you. But if you knew that there was a safe path through the minefield, as long as you walked on that path through it, could you make it? I bet they've got somebody that has mapped out a path through that minefield that if they wanted to walk through, I bet they have special forces or somebody that know, okay, we've got to walk here, 6 steps this way, then step to the side, 5 steps that way, step to your left, 2 paces, and you can make it through the path. You can make it through the minefield and the danger. And that's what His laws and His statutes are, His ordinances, His limits. They are the narrow path through what is a minefield of life. Life can blow you up, can't it?
In 23rd Psalm, I'm going to have to read it every day.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when you look at what it says about He leads you
in the paths of righteousness.
Mm-hmm. Water,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the storms are coming at you on all sides.
Mm-hmm.
He leads you beside the still water. You keep following Him.
Mm-hmm.
You have He'll say, peace be still. And then it says He leads you in green pastures. Sometimes that we have to have alone with Him so we can study His Word and get that feeding in our soul needs.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you said, He leads us in the path of life.
And that's the challenging part. I love that psalm. He prepared the green pastures, the still waters, and the path of righteousness. Those places are not our destination.
No.
He leads us. He gives us times of rest. He gives us times of feeding, and so that we can be strengthened. And He gives us the path of righteousness, because where does the path of righteousness lead? Well, in the psalm, it leads straight into the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah.
sometimes walking His path, sometimes walking His way, and doing everything right by Him is still going to take you into the valley of the shadow of death. But what is comforting for us is that He is with us. What is comforting for us is that He is a warrior. We read this earlier. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is His name. That He is armed and ready for battle, and He's got your back. That when you're in the midst of, because the valley of the shadow of death to David was the battlefield. Because all the armies would camp, they would be up on top of the hills, and they would meet in the middle. That's where the battles would take place. So when he talks about the valley of the shadow of death, he's talking about there is a war going on, and there are thousands of people lying dead around me, and I'm the only one left. But I am thankful that was good timing on that, wasn't it? I am thankful that He is with me, because as long as I've got one other person to fight with me, then I know somebody's got my back, and I know somebody's going to help me get out of here. Because you fight harder when you've got somebody else. You know, if it's just you, you might be tempted to surrender. But because you've got somebody else that you're going to carry out, then you're going to fight harder for that other person, even more than yourself.
I like that psalm where it says that He's our rear guard.
Yeah. He is our banner before us, and He is also our rear guard. Absolutely. This idea of hulk is also a portion. So like a portion of your inheritance, a portion of land. You'll see that used in just a minute. It's also an action that is prescribed. Once again, it's not just about knowing it. It's also an action that you're expected or required to do. The first time we see it is in Genesis 47:22, and it is an allotment of land. And then in 47 verse 26, this is in the life of Joseph, and it's talking about a statute or an order, for 1/5 of the produce of the land goes to Pharaoh. That was that kind of a statement. And then the next one is, so I will cause you to walk in my laws and keep my rulings or ordinances, mishpat, my judgments, my decisions, or the idea of justice. So it's the ruling king, the ruling one who has made his decision. It's part of the act of deciding a case. It's also the sense of a right or a privilege or something that is due. You're declared something, and out of that declaration, something comes back to you, or something comes to you from that. It also has something, I will cause you to walk in my proper or fitting ways. So I will cause you to walk in my privilege. I will cause you to walk in what is proper. And the first time we see that is Genesis chapter 18. This is the last one I'm going to do, by the way, because we've been here a while. Genesis 18, verse 19, where he says, for I have made myself known to him so that he will command his sons and his household after him to keep the way of Adonai by doing righteousness and justice, so that Adonai may bring upon Abraham what he has spoken about him. So it's that kind of a statement. And of course, again, for what purpose? What does he say that this new heart is for? That you might live in the land. One of the main reasons why the Israelites were expelled from the land is what? They were not walking in His ways or keeping His statutes. They were not even observing His Sabbath, not letting the land rest, to where you had a moment like Josiah when the book of the law is found, his first thought is panic, right? When he reads that, because man, we're not doing any of this stuff. And so there was a time of repentance. Okay? And so that is, they were to live in the land, and otherwise, he says, if you don't keep this, he says this, I think it's in Exodus, the land will essentially spit you out. And vomit you out.
Well, and he has good reasons for it, because my dad wrote this book about the migration in the Carolinas and all. And what happened was, they didn't rest the land, and they ruined it. And so they were having to migrate down to Georgia and Alabama and stuff like that, because the cotton wouldn't produce anymore, because they messed up.
Right.
So, literally, if they had to sue, you would die.
Right.
So, there's reasons.
Right. So the purpose of having that is that we may live in the land and live in the promise that He has for us, and also that we might, I will be your God, and you will be my people. We want to be His people, and then and we want Him to be our God. Those are the purposes of giving us a new heart, a heart of flesh, and putting His Spirit with us or in us. All right, that's all I'm going to say today.